Hello, fellow mech warriors, Mage Leader here. Welcome back to the channel. I have a very special guest here today. We have Kevin Scharf, the creative director from Flameborn Games. These are the guys who are making Heavy Gear 3. He's agreed to come on and answer some questions about the upcoming game, so it's pretty exciting. Welcome to the channel, Kevin.
I'm happy to be here. I already object to calling them MechWarriors. They should be duelists. That's the proper terminology.
Well,
I'm joking, of
we're,
course.
we're, we're in my house.
That is true. That is. Don't call the clans on me. I don't need a baton or anything like that. Let's just. I'm I'm scared already. So let's
So,
go.
you're the creative director. What exactly does that entail?
In terms of on this project, my position essentially covers all the creative decisions in terms of the general direction, the art style, making sure it's cohesive, following both brand and IP guidelines that are set out by Nature Upon Nine, who are the creators of Heavy Gear, and then having an overall like cohesive vision, and then cutting that all together, binding that all together from across all of the disciplines on the team, from narrative to animation, from sound to music, which is a little bit different actually, is SFX versus sound, from the art, both 2D and 3D, and then of course making sure that programming and design is also functioning. So at our studio, creative director is sometimes is a little bit more strays than the game director, which can kind of be a different seat sometimes at different studios, depending. But in our case, it's the person who's making all of the major choices, and then kind of keeping everyone on track. So that's what I'm doing.
All right, cool. You long-term Heavy Gear fan?
I'm a decently long-term fan of most mech stuff. I have a decent amount of enthusiasm towards BattleTech, of course. Although I must admit, I was more into the board game stuff and the tabletop, and then I kind of got really back into it recently with BattleTech from Hairbrain.
Okay. Yeah, so it kind of brings me to my first real question here. So my audience is full of mecha fans, just in general, but most of us are BattleTech devotees. So can you give us
Sure.
a sort of elevator pitch for Heavy Gear as a whole to bring some of the newer guys up to speed?
Of this page, sure, I can absolutely do that. Also, to circle back slightly, I have been a fan of Heavy Gear for a very long time. I'm also a pretty big fan of the things like Titanfall. I played a decent amount of Armored Core, though sadly have not played the newest Armored Core. I just haven't had time yet. And if there's one thing that I love doing in Fallout 4, it's getting into power armor and just slamming through barriers and then using the power sludge. That's kind of the stuff that I'm kind of more into in terms of all that kind of jazz. In terms of the elevator pitch for Heavy Gear, I think the main thing is Heavy Gear is a very grounded, gritty world that is about human emotions and very human themes. It's watching as things kind of repeat themselves, so to speak, which is very history for us, right, on Earth. So it's really about the human condition and how we can all get stuck in these loops and these cycles of violence and fear and paranoia and politics and power grabbing. And that's kind of the negative part of humanity. And then the positive part is that community building, spiritualism, that technology overcoming hardship, people overcoming prejudice as well as barriers and coming together to do greater things together and to protect each other and lift each other up. So if I was to kind of talk about what Heavy Gear is generally, it's essentially just re-examining, the story of humanity in a sci-fi backdrop. And then of course the simplest explanation is big mechs go zoom, and then they have guns and go boom, and that's a big draw, a big fun part of it. And of course it's also very heavily focused on combined arms. These are very fast-paced, kind of smaller machines where there's a single pilot, but they're not meant to be towering behemoths, and they're not like only 1 in 10 people can ever be a pilot. These are basically force amplifiers for infantry. So although duelists can become, quote unquote, the term for kind of ace pilots, and there's a whole history of that on the world, gear pilots and duelists are essentially just one part of a vast array of tools and the arsenals of the various polar leagues and the nation states of Terra Nova itself. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely pretty descriptive. I'm fairly new to Heavy Gear myself, but I will say that I've been very impressed with how realized the setting is. for what it is. It's
Yeah, over 30 years.
yeah,
30 years as a brand. It's wild to me how it's had so many ups and downs. And it's also had a very interconnected history with MechWarrior, of course, and BattleTech. So that's been very interesting to kind of follow for those of us who've been around for a long
yeah.
time.
I believe Heavy Gear 2 like shares a game engine with MechWarrior 3.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, and I might be getting this wrong, so I apologize if I'm getting it incorrect. If I remember correctly, Activision had MechWarrior. There was some sort of issue. They pivoted to Heavy Gear. Heavy Gear 1 was this huge hit. Heavy Gear is so old, the original Heavy Gear game, that the cutscenes were live action.
Hell
They were
yeah.
FMV, old school, and I think it was originally supposed to be a MechWarrior game. I'm not 100% sure, but they put it together and they did a great job. That led to Heavy Gear 2. I think at that point, Activision owned like all of the Western mech games. So, if I'm a guessing man, I think it's someone at Activision was like, wait a minute, why are we own Coke and Pepsi. Why don't we just focus on one or the other? Why are we doing both? So I think that was kind of what was going on there. There's a few other stories that I've heard. I think the interesting thing about it all, in terms of just the overall thing, is Heavy Gear spanned 3 video games, a bunch of books. They're called storybooks, but they're still books, about 4 to 6 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Just so many RPG books. There's been different versions of the RPG. The most recent 4th edition has come out, so TTRPG. Heavy Gear Bliss, Heavy Gear Arena, then Heavy Gear, the like actual tactical board game, and miniatures war game. And then there was a TV show that was in the style of Reboot, if anyone remembers that. So it was like a CGI cartoon show when that was like really cutting edge and hard to do.
Yeah, we
And
actually
it was
watched the
that's
first episode of that on the channel here. I've got a
Yeah, yeah.
basically it's just a video of me and the guys from my server here watching it and just kind of losing our minds trying to keep up with it because it's a bit of a trip, that show.
It was. There's stories behind that too. I believe there might have been a few comics as well. I'm not 100% sure if that was more integrated into the magazine that they had going at one point, or if that was separate comics. But I could always ask DreamPod9 about that later. But there was also some comic stuff too in the history. And it's a wild history. It spans hundreds of years. So very similar to BattleTech in the sense that it talks about kind of the second ice age and the Third World War, and then it goes from there to kind of like how humanity spreads throughout the stars and goes to all these planets and things like that. I don't think at the scale of BattleTech, like BattleTech has hundreds and hundreds of planets, right?
Hmm.
And huge successor houses and all that jazz. And then that's really cool thing about that. I've always been a huge fan of the Inner Sphere and the clans and everything. But the main thing with Heavy Gear is that it's really about a select number of colony worlds, and that they break away from Earth due to this whole period of time when Earth retreats in on itself and becomes very insular. They can't pay for the colonies anymore, so they leave them to their own devices. And then those colonies develop their own cultures, have their own wins and technologies and losses and travesties and catastrophes and victories. And then later, the newly called CEF, which is the new Earth government, comes to reclaim the colonies and make them pay for everything. Because it's their fault everything went wrong. So they come out and try to invade all these countries. And Terra Nova is one of a couple of planets that get invaded, but it is the main focus of most of the world. And Heavy Gear is the term from their world because they have these gears, these mechs that they've invented. So when the CEF invades, they're like, what are those? As they see these bipedal, fast-moving gears that can punch things, kick things, shoot things, and move as fast as a tank. So they're in a bit of a shock. So it's kind of a fun thing.
All right.
So yeah, there you go.
So you said Heavy Gear's been going for around 30 years. So
30
about
years.
how long has the idea for Heavy Gear 3 been like on the back burner? Has been quietly in the concept phase for a long time, or is this something brand new?
That's an interesting question. So when you ask that question, are you talking about Heavy Gear 3 in general outside of Flameborn Games, or are you talking about Flameborn Games deciding to do Heavy Gear 3 in our
I'd say a little
relationship
bit
with
of both. It
DreamPod?
really depends on how much you're pulling from that original concept.
Okay. So we are not, to be clear, a continuation of what was called Heavy Gear 3. So there was a Heavy Gear 3 back in the day. It was being followed up on Heavy Gear 2 at Activision. And this is in no way associated with Activision, just to be clear. And DreamPod 9, we have no materials or any information on that other than what's been released online and talked about by former team members there from way back in the day. That's before I think Unreal was really even a proper engine. But there had been various attempts and conversations with DreamPod 9 to do a new game. To that end, we are not associated with that, and that was something that was happening way before Flameborn was ever born. The history of Flameborn Games is a little bit interesting. So the team itself had worked at a prior studio. A majority of the team had worked together at a prior studio. Due to some circumstances, that studio kind of didn't work out for a large number of the team, so a good amount of the team had left. And we'd all realized we really liked working with each other. So we had worked with each other somehow up to about 2 years. Others had worked together for about a year. I was one of the newer members on the team. So I'd only worked with the team for, I think, about 6 months at that point. And there was this kind of conversation between everyone at Flameborn. It wasn't called Flameborn at the time, but hey, we really liked working with each other. We really had a good time. And then we're like, do you guys want to make something? And then we all just decided to put a studio together. And we had the resources and the know-how, and it was a great mix of industry vets who've been in the AAA and indie scene for years and years and years. And then there was some of us who were really, new and just scrappy, but really were up and coming and just really excited and dedicated and knew their stuff in their specific areas. But we'd all really worked with each other well, so we decided to form a studio. So Flameborn Games was kind of born from the flames of that. And yeah, you see, brand, link to the name. But at the same time, we started discussing projects that we wanted to go and do. We do have another project that's in full production right now. I can't talk about it, it's not announced. But there is another project. It's very different than the mech and kind of shooter genre. And that was something we started working on immediately. The joke I made with our studio head, Mark Waterworth, was that Project A, that's what I can term it right now, is all gas, no brakes. And I don't even think we had time to do proper concept art for it. We literally just ran right into it, into beta and into production. And it was just throw the tracks down and just start making something so we can really keep our creativity going and keep the team moving. And that was very fun, and it's gone quite well, and we're really having a good time with that. But people on the team started talking about more long-term projects, and there were some things talked about and discussed, and there were some original concepts, and a few of us were like, well, we're Canadian, and at that time the rhetoric of, I'm sorry to say this to our American neighbors, there was some rhetoric about Canada and tariffs and stuff, and we were kind of like, is there any Canadian IPs out there that haven't been touched in a long time? And then some of us are like, what about Heavy Gear? Because we were fans. We had played as kids, and some of us knew things about it, and all that jazz. And then we investigated, and we were like, oh my God, this IP is available, potentially.
Oh,
And then we
missed
got really
opportunity to
excited.
make Tim Hortons the game.
Yeah, I know, but at the end of the day, there's only so many roll up the rim to wins and double doubles that you can do in gameplay design before it becomes tedious.
That's true.
But and it was an interesting conversation, and we got very lucky. We were able to get into a conversation with a gentleman named Prof. Nicholas, who's a big part of the Heavy Gear community, and he's a very big part of the RPG, the fourth edition for Heavy Gear. And we contacted him, and I wouldn't say standoffish, but it was very much like, oh, and then we kind of made a light pitch to him about what we were thinking of doing. And he was like, you know what? Let me get you in contact with the right people. And he got us in contact with DreamPod 9 directly. And then DreamPod 9, they were like, okay, give us a pitch. And we went to a few meetings with Robert Dubois of DreamPod 9, president, and it went from there. And it's just been a fantastic ride. They're very supportive. And they're very excited about the fact that we want to bring it to life, and that we're very, very much engaged with the IP and bringing the IP to life. And we're very excited with the fact that he's giving us a chance and a shot at this. We're very aware that Flameborn, as an entity, as a studio, doesn't have a release title to its name. So that's something that we're kind of looking at. But, I think in some ways very similar to how MechTech had been trusted with Heavy Gear Assault, if you remember that, and also Piranha Games, how they really work hard to bring MechWarrior to life. You got to have a passion for the IP, and you got to have a passion for the story and the lore. And luckily, Robert was able to see we have a passion for it, so we're just very, very excited to be doing this.
All right, well, that's excellent. So yeah, there's definitely been a bit of a resurgence in mech games over the past few years. We've had MechWarrior
Yes.
5, it's gotten a bunch of DLC, there's MechWarrior 5 Clans, Armored Core 6. The indie scene right now, I followed a bunch of projects. It's exploding with mech games right now, believe it or not. But it sounds
Yep.
like Sounds like this wasn't really part of any kind of movement. It's just you guys really like heavy gear.
You know what's funny about that? I've always, I've been in the industry for a long time. I think the only time I didn't see an upswell of stuff was when I was on the Assassin's Creed Black Flag team, which is a fantastic pirate game. I don't care what anyone
That's a
says.
great game, yeah.
I know some people sometimes are like, "Oh, Assassin's Creed, so many different releases," but
The
like
sneaking
Black Flag
parts
was
are kind of
awesome.
lame, but when you're doing the pirate stuff,
Look,
the game's amazing.
I listen. I always still laugh at the stealth ship missions where it's like, keep our ship out of sight. I'm like, come on, guys, come on. But that's the only complaint that I have. But I get it. Someone on the room was like, okay, we need stealth, and it's like, really for the ships?
It's a
But
stealth game, guys.
yeah. It's a stealth game. But nothing feels greater than when you do parkour through rigging and along the mast between two ships that are docking with each other. And
Yeah.
you really feel like a pirate in that game. And when you're crew singing sea shanties and everything, so that's a big part of the DNA there. But I think the main thing is, I think organically, a lot of people got excited about mech games and sci-fi and stuff. It comes in waves, and it was great. It was great seeing things like Armored Core 6, and I think MechWarrior was another one that I saw recently. Seeing kind of there was some Votom stuff that I saw recently as well. I was seeing fan stuff where engines have now gotten to the point that very small groups of people, like 2 or 3 people, can really do some interesting stuff. There's so much great VR stuff as well.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, like, how can we not talk about, when the BattleTech game came out from Harebrained, I squealed like a kid. I was like, yes, because that was just so great. And the MechWarrior stuff, of course, with clans and just recently Shadow Kerensky. Kerensky. I always say it wrong, so I'm sorry. Apologies. Don't send a Comstar assassin after me, please. But
We're not clanners here. You can mispronounce the guy's name all you want.
Good. So long as Blake doesn't hear it over the phone. But I think the main thing is that it's humbling to be part of that wave. It's really exciting, and it's also exciting being part of something that is so old. Heavy Gear, 30 years old. It was one of the granddaddies at one point. It was very big. They went to the biggest shows like E3 and things like that with huge statues of the gears at scale and stuff. So to be given a chance to bring some life back to it and get introduce some people to stuff that they've either forgotten about or have never seen before, it's just awesome. So I'm very excited about that. But I think it was an organic wave rather than there was no stonecutters table meeting where all these devs got into a room on a Discord and said, okay, now is the hour. Let's bring back mech games.
It's not like what's popular right now. Mech games, go.
Mech games, yeah. I don't think that happened. I'd absolutely love if we had a Discord where all the mech developers were all in one room, just hyping each other up. That'd be amazing.
That would be incredible.
I think at the end of the day, it's just a very organic push from East and West and Europe, where everyone got really excited about it again.
Awesome. And we've all seen the announcement. We read the articles here on the channel, my last video on the topic. But it might be a good idea to hear it directly from the horse's mouth. What kind of game is Heavy Gear 3 hopefully going to be?
Well, I can tell you that it's, that we made a joke in the announcement where we said it's not an esports NFT, gotcha, free to play, always online, live service. So that was the first thing we said because there was quite a lot of bad blood. And no offense to the team that worked on Heavy Gear Assault, the team itself was fantastic, and they were trying to do an esports game. But there was a lot of concerns from Heavy Gear fans who had supported Heavy Gear Assault about that because there was a lot of pivots that were outside of the control of that team from outside sources and investors. So we are a single-player focused game. We are investigating. I can say we're investigating co-op and multiplayer, but single player is our priority first and foremost, and what we want to do. It is a real-time action RPG. We are looking at a mixture of third person and first person. I can't get too much more into that at this time. And we are still in the very early days of development, of course, so there's still some things we have to do. And it's very much, I would describe it as a hub-based world, but I think a good way of thinking of it is that there's probably going to be a very large hub zone that's a borderline sandbox area, which is the Badlands, and then there's a few offshooting hubs from that where you get to explore and do different things in it. So that's pretty much how we're looking at the game. To get a bit more detailed, which is fun, there's been some questions about like quest design and are we doing missions and things like that. And all I can say is stay tuned overall. But I think you can expect in a game like Heavy Gear, which is definitely in the world, it is about jobs and contracts and going out on missions for your chosen league, your government, and the military of that government. Mission-based structures for quest design is probably a good bet to assume is going to happen unless we came up with something really really unique. But then
All
we'd have
right.
to tell everybody about that.
So can you give us like a rough idea of the intended gameplay loop? Like what will players be spending most of their time doing?
I think it's entirely based on what you see on the tabletop. So, the famous words of Robert, as well as the other gentleman at DreamPod 9 and gals, is zoom and boom. So the loop of combat, the minute by minute, is about movement. Movement is life. You don't want to stay still because unless you're booming and really staying still for a reason, you should be zooming. And if you're zooming and booming, it can be hard, but it's all about that. So it's a lot of movement. We definitely are working at it. We've declared this openly already. But we are looking at inside of gear and outside of gear combat, so infantry combat plus gear combat, mech combat, and we're doing a look at some light vehicles as well. So we see that as kind of, I guess, a scale is a good way of putting that. I almost like gradient for some reason, but scale. So it goes from you're always zooming when you're in a vehicle to stay alive, and although you can boom, you can shoot, you don't stop when you're in a vehicle. So when you're in like a buggy or a trike or a motorcycle or a hover bike and things like that, when you're in your gears, it's zoom and boom is the big choice. Am I zooming? Am I booming? And boom. And there's advantages and disadvantages, and there's also melee on top of that, and not just shooting. And then when you're out of gear, when you're in infantry, you're booming as much as possible, but you're trying to find the best place with good cover or perfect angles or good height advantage and things like that to boom. Because as infantry, if you're trying to zoom, you're squishy. You don't have armor. You're very very vulnerable. So you are trying to short burst zoom to get from place to place. You do not want to be running across that soccer field openly when there's two gears and a bunch of enemy infantry in their own fixed positions waiting for you. So yeah, that's pretty much the combat loop in play.
Cool. I've been diving back into Heavy Gear 2 recently. Famously, my first attempt was something of a disaster, but I'm enjoying it a lot more now. I think the game overall is designed pretty well. How much are you guys planning to take from prior titles?
We're definitely taking inspiration from everything. So that's an interesting question. We've had that. We've had people going, "Are you more like Assault? Are you more like Heavy Gear 1, 2? More like the tabletop games? More like the RPG, which has some differences? Blitz versus Arena, of course, as well. Are you more like the show?" The weird amount of people who have asked us if we're like the show has been staggering in terms of messages. We're trying to honor the whole thing. At the same time, we don't want it to be a hodgepodge. So I do think that if we're talking about something I think we're locked in more on right now officially in terms of still some exploration period going on, I think the guns and the way that guns are functioning in Heavy Gear 1 and 2 are definitely great reference points. We really enjoy the loadouts. So the idea of being able to switch your loadouts and change things and all that stuff and all that jazz. That's definitely where we're really looking at that and we enjoy that. That also plays very heavily in the zoom and boom combat. At the same time, Heavy Gear 1 and 2 are really old, as you probably saw.
Oh, yeah.
So game engines have progressed quite a lot. So there's a lot of stuff that we can improve on in terms of just environment interactions, lighting, you name it, even just visibility via smoke grenades and things like that,
Definitely, like, try and
and
make the
effects. Yeah.
enemies less accurate, because in Heavy Gear 2, even if you're at full speed, they can just hit you sometimes.
Yeah, I think the joke that one of my friends made was that every person there seems to be like a Terminator in terms of just being a perfect shot all the time. But I think the main thing is that the biggest thing we took from it is you can't have heavy gear without gear combat.
No,
And
absolutely.
zoom and boom is really what makes heavy gear in our opinion. So yeah, that's our biggest takeaways.
As long as the zooming actually helps you avoid taking damage.
Hopefully, sometimes you might take more damage if you zoom wrong. If you go
Sure,
off the
yeah,
wrong ramp,
absolutely.
you might, as Isaac Newton said, physics is the deadliest son of a bitch. Oh wait, no, that's from Mass Effect. No, I'm joking. But the physics is the deadliest son of a bitch in the universe. So you don't just eyeball it if you know that one from Mass Effect original. But the main thing I think is we're very very excited about playing into those systems. And the tabletop stuff, I think the thing that I'm really excited about is you don't have fixed weapons. By having the hands and the digits, you're just picking up different weapons, switching out to different ammo types, making your choice on whether you're going long range, short range, defeat another gear. drop the weapon you have, pick up the weapon of the other gear,
Oh, that would be
and
so
push up and
cool.
things. It's very, very fun stuff and looking at that. And of course, there's three classes of gears. There's light, there's medium, and there's heavy. And those change gameplay to degrees. And then of course, if you're not in a gear, well, gears get a little bit scared if they're by themselves in urban combat or in very dense, tightly packed areas. Because if someone can get above you and things, sticky grenades and ambushes and L-shaped ambushes, asymmetric warfare is a terrible thing, right? When you're not able to be too mobile. So there's a lot of fun stuff that we get to play with, and Flameborn is super excited about that challenge, and we look forward to engaging that challenge. So yeah.
Nice. That actually does lead into one of my other questions here. One thing that's been common in a lot of modern mech games is the power fantasy aspect, like cutting your way through scores of enemies at a time, like a one-man army. MechWarrior 5 does this a lot. When I went back to Heavy Gear 2, the thing that struck me is how few enemies there are in a lot of missions, and the single enemy gear is a very real threat. Something that's actually really cool about it is Heavy Gear 3 going to shoot for something like that, or is it going to be closer to the middle of the two extremes?
I think we're looking for closer to the middle, but that leads to an interesting kind of segue there. We had people talking today, like, are we doing ammo counting and survival stuff like water and fuel and food and sleep cycles and things like that? So very Fallout New Vegas, if you know that reference for that video game. And I think the main thing is that power fantasy it is one of those things that we notice with players, especially in RPGs and especially with mech games. It can really be divisive, right? Some people really want that simulation feel where everything is a perfect simulator, and then other people really, really want the kind of power fantasy of Dynasty Warriors. Not mech, but you know what I mean. Like, although there's Gundam Dynasty Warriors, so I guess that counts. When you cut energy
Yeah,
blade out and
kind
50 things blow up. Yeah, I know it's not. But and I'm not going to solve it. But I think the main thing about it is that we look at that as more of an options thing. Like we would have a survival mode where things get a little bit more like I have 8 rockets before I have to go back and reload in my shoulder. I have only 5 ammo clips. And then we joked about calling it the anime toggle. Sophie, would you like to be in an anime? Toggle this. Your gun never runs out. So you don't have to stress about it. That's weird. That clip has never ejected from that gun once. So we've talked about having something a little bit toggled there, so that some people who are just like, listen, my life's tough enough. I really just want to come in here and
Yeah.
shoot this
I
gun
mean, that was an
over and over and
option
over
back
again.
in MechWarrior
Yeah,
4. You could turn
yeah,
on invincibility and infinite ammo in the options menu.
yeah. So I think that's something where we're looking at that more as kind of like we'd like to put that in the hand of the players so they can tailor their experience a little bit better. And I think that's better for balance as well, rather than trying to force you to enjoy it the way we envision. So I feel like very strongly that giving those options there is better. To cycle back more into it when we're talking about like how many people are you fighting and how popular or unpopulated it is, one of the reasons why Heavy Gear 1 and 2 have so few opponents is because the engine can only handle so much.
Right.
If you put too much in there, it's a very old engine, so it's just like, I do not compute. Help me, I have a calculator for RAM. So in that specific case, we can do a lot more with current rigs and consoles and engines and everything, and RAM and stuff like that. At the same time, although there are big battles in Terra Nova, it's not to the scale of MechWarrior, where like entire planets can have wars. Sometimes in some of the bigger conflicts, right? Like where it's 5 cities are being invaded at once and multiple dropships are dropping down, and you have entire lances and battalions of people. Many conflicts in Heavy Gear are very personal. It's like five gears with supporting infantry versus 4 gears with 2 hover tanks. Those kind of are kind of the standard fights across Terra Nova and in terms of lore. But they have wars. They had the War of the Last Alliance. There's the Interpolar Wars, and then they have a secondary invasion on their lore and all sorts of stuff. So sometimes you get these really big battles, and hopefully we get to do some of those.
Think we might see something giant like one of those big land battleships?
I will neither confirm nor deny at this stage,
Fair enough.
unfortunately. But yeah.
I've heard several times that this game isn't looking to compare itself to something like MechWarrior, but for the guys in my audience, especially, the comparison is probably inevitable. What specifically do you feel is going to set this game apart from its American cousin?
First off, I object. First off, MechWarrior copied us. We're Heavy Gear. Canadians are obviously the
Whoa,
most. No, I'm
them's
joking,
fighting
of course.
words.
Definitely fighting words. So I'm joking there while I'm smiling. I think the main thing to remember is the comparison started around Heavy Gear because of the fact that they had It was literally a MechWarrior game, and then they switched it to a Heavy Gear game. So some of those systems were actually very similar to MechWarrior systems. The second one is how we talk about Heavy Gear Assault. I think that's also been a really funny thing. The group that got involved with Heavy Gear Assault that offered and was doing support and doing a lot of work, if I'm not mistaken, was MechTech, but they were very much and still very much active in the MechWarrior community. So seeing the two kind of big granddaddies of mech games in the West having similarities here and there, it's not too surprising to me. I think when I was making comments, and we did this in our Q&A and stuff online, where I said heavy gear is heavy gear, because we've had people say to us like, is it Titanfall or is it MechWarrior? And I have to respond with it's heavy gear, and they get confused, or like, oh come on, which one is it? And it's like, it's heavy gear. And I think that the reason to keep that going, understanding, aside from just not only talking about the scale, right? Like MechWarrior has this huge scale, big war machines. I've seen some of the MechWarrior games have treated the pilots like knights of old and stuff, and depending on the era, right? When Comstar and when you have if I remember correctly, the entire the League, right? And I'm getting the name wrong. I apologize there, but the whole thing, and then the fall of that, and then you have kind of the Dark Ages and less mechs, and then you have, I'm going to say this wrong, but it's my favorite battle in all of the lore, Tukied, I think, the when Comstar faces the clans. It's like my
Yep,
favorite
Tukian.
lore piece. I have watched that video from the Black Pants Legion.
Oh yeah, we all
I
love
love that
Tex.
video. Yeah, Tex is amazing, and I absolutely crack up. A friend of mine sent me a meme where it's got this music and it's like da 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 da. It's just text from Reddit and 4chan and stuff explaining the lore, and then sometimes his voice cuts in and I just burst out laughing every time. But you know, I think the main thing to understand is, Mech Warrior. It would be like saying, is Mech Warrior like Gundam? Is
Yeah,
Mech Warrior like Fatam? And I'm like, guys, we have similarities in the sense of big robots, people piloting, things like that. But there's very distinctive flavors, and Heavy Gear is based around zoom and boom combat. I wouldn't say that MechWarrior is based on zoom and boom. MechWarrior is
definitely
very,
not.
very
No.
much about, in my opinion, preparation. You've practically won half the battles before you step on the field of battle, right?
Yeah, pretty
Because
much.
of your loadout and your team composition and things like that. Um, all of that said, and I do love that question. Sorry for being long-winded on the answer here.
Yeah, no problem.
The comparison is going to be inevitable, and we're going to get compared to each other. I just kind of have a grin on my face because for Heavy Gear fans, that's just great to have that comparison again. Because we've been in a drought for a long time. We haven't had anything in a long time. And you guys have been sitting over there having a great time, having Piranha Games pump out stuff and Hairbrain and others. So it's kind of like, hey, guess what? We get to finally play some Heavy Gear now. So it's fair to be like, do we have more energy weapons or this or that? There'll be comparisons, but no, it's not the same thing. So
All
yeah,
right. Well, let's shift gears for a second and talk about art style. So,
like that.
Heavy Gear has a very distinctive look to it. I'll put up some images in the editing process
Hmm.
so people can get an idea of it. Much of the official artwork adopts almost this sort of Western anime look.
Yeah.
Prior video games didn't really have the tech for realism, and so they were also pretty heavily stylized. Will Heavy Gear 3 try for a more photorealistic style, or will it be closer to what you might expect to see in the tabletop artwork?
I think if you look at our teaser that we did, that is all in-game assets that we're using and testing with. Um, Even when you look at the gear that we have in the teaser, it's just the upper half of it kind of wrecked, holding the Western Frontier Protectorate flag. Um, that is a fully rigged model. That is an in-engine model that we're using for testing locomotion right now. We have a version that's not destroyed though, so we should probably test out the destroyed version moving around. That'd be fun. But you kind of get a sense of what we're trying to do from that trailer. So although we're leaning heavily into Unreal 5, which is really great at high quality textures and great lighting and all sorts of stuff, and although I think there was a question you sent me about Unreal 5, and I'm happy to answer that one after this. I think when it comes to the art style, what we're really aiming for is to honor the original art style of the books and the reference points. So we're definitely leaning more towards anime for sure, because we feel such a unique look and stuff. There is some stuff that just does not work, just to be clear. Um, there's some stuff where you see these really rounded feet and rounded shoulders and stuff, and some of them are so over the top. You're like, yeah, that looks cool in a single pose, hand drawn. But if you put that animated, like he shifts his shoulder and the whole pauldron just crushes the head of the gear. If he moves his arms up at the same time, it just clanks it. So there is some changes that will most likely be made for those reasons, but we're downplaying it rather than trying to change it or get away from it. We feel strongly about honoring the original style.
How about with like the human characters in this world?
I think that's a very interesting question. I will say right now, at this time, it's not 100% locked down, but we have some interesting art direction in that way. I can't wait to share that with you guys in the future, but I can't confirm or deny the direct direction of the humans outside of the gears in the cities. But I think people really like it. It is definitely very distinctive, and it'll be a lot further than just say using metahuman to make characters. So I think that's what I can say at this point.
All right, perfect. So that leads into another question here. I think we kind of answered this a little earlier, but I'll ask it anyway. Will we be able to shoot at infantry in our gears?
That's a war crime, isn't it? No, I'm joking. So shooting at infantry and gears, yeah, we're going to be having multi-level combat. So infantry, vehicles, and gears fight each other extensively in the TTRPG and the tabletop war games and the miniature game, as well as in the shows and things like that, and the other games. So yeah, you're going to be targeting, shooting at them, and they're going to be shooting at you. Anti-gear and anti-tank and armor piercing and small field guns and things like that can be an absolutely deadly thing to run into as a gear pilot. So yeah, 100%.
That sounds amazing. That's a personal note from me because
Fair
I
enough.
love in MechWarrior 3 that you could stomp on the little guys who are running around. We haven't had proper infantry integration in MechWarrior since Mech
Well, that's
Assault.
it, it's so tough for them. I really was excited when I saw the elementals being brought back in a really interesting way in some of the last DLCs. I think it was Clan Ghost Bear DLC that's been showcased. I'm not sure if it's out yet, but I saw one of the teasers where they saw the elementals kind of like the elemental squad jumping around, which is not exactly like infantry, but you know what I mean. It's so much tougher, I think, for MechWarrior because the scale of your mechs is huge, right? So making it feel intense and actually useful can be sometimes tougher there. In heavy gear, the scale of the gears, they're closer to semi trucks and tanks in terms of the scale of the mechs and the gears. There are things called striders, which are, I think, the most closest thing to being equivalent, if not sometimes bigger than mechs from the BattleTech universe. But those are very specific things, and they're big and huge and have multiple pilots. They have like two or three pilots. But most gears are kind of, you know, man, I'm trying to think of. I want to say the Locust, but I think I'm getting the wrong mech class. Describing the wrong mech class, and then all of your fans are gonna be like, "This guy doesn't know anything about BattleTech," and I'll be in trouble. But
The
if I'm
Locust
thinking
is
about the
one of
one
the
that
smaller
has,
ones.
yeah, it has like the two legs and no arms, and usually has like missile pods and things, and can run really
Yeah,
fast.
yeah.
I'm
The
trying to
Locust
remember
is
the
like
name of
that.
it.
The Flea is even smaller. Same
The Flea,
idea.
yeah. So I think those would be kind of pretty. They're still pretty big compared to a gear, if I'm not mistaken, by their size. But they're like a
Yeah,
Grizzly and a Kodiak are probably getting pretty
I
close.
think
Those
the
are those are the heaviest
closest.
class.
Yeah, I think the closest thing in scale in BattleTech, you have to go into Dark Age, which isn't canon, and we don't talk
Yeah.
about it much. But you have to get into Proto Mechs, which are kind
I
of
have
between power armor and light mechs.
I I have a confession.
Uh
I
oh.
haven't looked at Dark Age. I don't know anything about Dark Age.
Well, you're in luck. I
And
made a video about it. Mostly,
when
it's just me complaining, but I did I did
fair
make a
enough.
video about it.
Well, I had a friend and I asked him a question because he's huge into tabletop. I'm like, "What's Dark Age?" And he's like, "We don't speak of it." And I was like, "What? Why? What? Why is there so much hate?" So I guess you guys can tell me in the comments down below how they feel
I'll
about it.
send you a
But
link to my video. The
yeah,
video is literally
fair
called "Why
enough.
Does Everyone Hate the Dark Age?"
Oh, fair enough, fair enough.
So,
Well, I won't pass judgment. I'm trying to always support other creatives, so we'll see how that goes.
all right. So we've answered this question a little bit earlier with combined arms is very clearly a big part of this game. So it's not
Yeah.
just the robots. There's going to be tanks and other vehicles, infantry with anti-gear weaponry.
Yeah, our minimum it's about gears versus gears with infantry support. with some light vehicle support. We are looking at all sorts of different things to add there. I think the safest thing to say is that we're probably not going to be having too much air support in the game.
Hmm.
That can get very complex very quickly. Also, the Badlands is terrible for aircraft normally, lore-wise, which is the equator region of this very sandy, dusty, dry desert that has these huge sandstorms that are very like Mad Maxy, if you know that one from Fury Road. So you get careful about bringing complex aircraft into those. They don't last long. So a lot of the aircraft are Vital or helicopter style because they need to land fast to like weather through a sandstorm. But yeah, it's really about combined arms. That's a big part of what we're looking at for sure.
All right. Here's a fun question that I just put in here to just throw in anywhere. Gearball.
Oh boy. Um,
So for those who don't know, Gearball, it's kind of like playing Rocket League, but with the heavy gears. It's like robot soccer, more or less.
so I will neither confirm nor deny. What's crazy? I think there's like 5 or 6 different sports with gears.
Yeah.
So there's gearball, which if I remember correctly is from the shows. There's dueling, where two gears will fight in an arena that people are watching, like old Coliseum style. And sometimes they fight with absolutely exotic or absolutely ridiculous weapons that make no sense, like electric chains, sledgehammers, like hydraulic gauntlets that like punch 500 times, like that scene where the Hulkbuster is punching Hulk and going, "Go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep." If you
Yeah.
know that
Or like in
reference.
Votoms, you get like the
Yeah,
fist with the shell casing in it.
yeah, yeah, and then sometimes they fight with swords and weapons. So there's literally gear-sized Bowie knives and vibro rapiers and katanas and battle axes. And then my favorite one that I've seen is a gigantic club, but it's a construction, like painted like construction, black and white, and it's just a club. It's just a cinder block just mounted on a handle, and that one always cracks me up because I'm like, which pilot looked at that and said to himself, Yuri, give me club. And it's like, are you sure? This will work. No worries. Maximum effort. And you're just like, okay.
That's
So
the
there's the
epitome
dueling
of I
stuff that's
have a
just,
plan.
I
Attack.
have a plan. If I hit them, they will fall, right?
Yes.
You have gear racing, which sometimes they have gear racing with combat and without combat, so you could shoot the people you're racing against, but you're in a race. And then there's other things too. And there's also mounts. There's living creatures you can ride on the world. There's things called Barnabys. There's hoppers. These are kind of like alien creatures that exist on Terra Nova because it has its own ecosystem. You know what's funny? The only IP rule that's really hard locked for us that was told to us by DreamPod 9 day one that we had to be okay with was we're allowed to have aliens, but only if you can eat them with ketchup.
Fair enough.
So no intelligent civilizations out there.
That's
Only the
something that I
things that grew up on
wish.
worlds.
That's something I wish MechWarrior would do as well, because BattleTech canonically has all kinds of crazy fauna throughout. You just never see them. Like there's worlds in BattleTech where there are guys fighting giant dinosaurs with mechs, but you never get to see any of that.
Yeah, well, there's quite a little bit of stuff on in heavy gear. There's actually dog-sized wasps that are
Oh
terrifying,
God,
and they build hives. And I'll neither confirm nor deny if our team is very excited about bringing that fun to the game and to the players'
bring
hands.
cazadors from New Vegas in.
I will neither confirm nor deny. I'm excited, but I can't confirm nor deny that.
So, is the plan for the game to be like freeform and open, or more scripted and curated? Maybe somewhere in the, or it's like somewhere in the middle, like Metro
Definitely in the
Exodus.
middle.
In the middle.
I think it's definitely in the middle. I think MechWarrior Exodus is a good example. I would, some of the references that we're using when we're talking about stuff is we really do enjoy kind of mission structured, really great things. So I think Titanfall has some great missions as an example, both Titanfall 1 and 2. But then we also look at a lot of games. So Metro Exodus is a good one. Looking at things like Fallout 4, of course, Fallout New Vegas has been a big reference point in terms of conversations. We've really looked at, I think we love some of the mission style stuff for Metal Gear Solid, where you can have like a really interesting kind of tighter mission hub, but there's so many different ways to approach the mission and do things in an area. We've looked at things like, it's really, I'm going to reference 2 games that are a little bit strange. So Outer Worlds as well as Avowed. There's a lot of problems with Avowed, and I think that's because they just really had a short production run, and you can't get around that. But I think some of the great stuff that worked with Avowed is they had really great hubs. So some of the hubs were really, really big, and then some of them were like really focused. So that allowed you as a player to know if you're like, I'm only doing this one mission here, and it's really bespoke and really tight knit in here, which is much closer to what you just said in terms of mission structure. And then, oh, this is a more wilderness area, and I'm exploring, and there's multiple things to do here. So we're kind of aiming more towards those kind of experiences. I would say, but we're definitely, we're leaning more towards, I would say, like Metro Exodus and Fallout New Vegas and Outer Worlds. I think those would be the good reference points to have.
All right, fantastic. So, Flameborn Games is a brand new studio. I believe this
Hmm.
is your first game as a team.
Ironically, this is our second game as a team.
Oh,
So that's the weird one. So I kind of talked about that at the start, forming. So we have another project that's in production right now. Uh, that's all I can say. That's all I'm permitted to say, and I don't want to get an angry team or anything like that. But I am allowed to talk about it a little bit to that degree. So we had started production on something because we were in negotiations for the IP on Heavy Gear. So we didn't know if we would get the IP on Heavy Gear. So we'd started a project before we had started the IP negotiations and acquiring Heavy Gear. That project is going quite well. We'll be out of production, pretty soon. I can't go further than that. It's a very different style game. It's all I can say is it's not a shooter and it's not a mech game, but it's something that a lot of people on our team are also very excited about. And in terms of this, Heavy Gear is technically our second project.
okay. So I've heard that the team is made up of industry veterans, but to a lot of people, you're still fairly unknown. What would you say to someone who might be skeptical about your ability to deliver this project?
Oh, geez. I think that one is a great question because here's the thing. What they're really saying is, are you going to hurt me again? And then I'm
Hmm.
going to say to them, who hurt you? Because as a gamer myself and someone who plays a lot of games, I get where it comes from. It's a fear, right? And we all have limited time to enjoy games, and some of us have very limited resources. And gaming is not just a passion and a hobby, but it's also an escape from a variety of things. And sometimes it's very light in terms of the escape, and sometimes it's vital. It's how we connect with people. It's our communities. It's what allows us to get through another week, so to speak. So I've always appreciated that aspect of it. Um, the question basically is broken down into two parts. So, are you experienced enough to make a game like this? So first off, we have industry veterans on our team. We've had people who've been in this industry at all levels, from indie to kind of double A and triple I is what the term is being used now, but basically larger releases, to like triple A, like big, like your EA, Ubisoft, Activision, Blizzard kind of games. We also have people where this is their first project, but they came out of university or they came out of courses or they've only worked on some light kind of, you call them indie, but they never really saw the light of day for a variety of different reasons. Games get canceled all the time and things happen in business. But the main thing is that they're all very passionate. They're all very excited, and we're happy to have them under the Flameborn banner. But that said, this wasn't just a team that was formed out of nowhere. Like I said earlier in this interview, the team had come together after working together, the majority of the team, for a good solid year to 2 years. So this isn't the first time. Like we hit the ground running. We knew how to do our databases. We chose Unreal 5 primarily because of our experience in it. Many of us have worked in Unreal for many, many years. So one of the big reasons we said let's work with this is because we know it. And there's just some controversy there we can talk about as well because I've heard some comments online about Unreal, the concerns about poor performance, obviously, and optimization. So we can talk about that, of course, after this. The main thing to reassure you is, so first off, we're not bullshotting anything. I want to be really clear about this. Everything you saw in the teaser was made in-house or is part of Unreal. So like the skybox and some of the lighting tools and things like that, that's part of the Unreal Engine. But like the gear, the guns, the bullets, the bodies on the ground, the environmental, the cactus, we made the cactus in-house, the stone head. That was all made by our team, and these are all assets that we're working with over and over again, and testing and using and experimenting with. So we feel very strongly about making sure that you guys get the real deal. And by you guys, I mean fans and gamers. The second part of that is, do I know for sure you guys are going to like the game? I certainly hope so. Are we committed to giving you the best game we possibly can? Yeah, absolutely. But there's a reason we decided not to approach Kickstarter, like some have in the past and things like that. We were fully funded, and at Flameborn, and which if you're paying attention to the game industry right now, there's a lot of uncertainty economic wise in the game industry. There's a lot of turbulence right now, so we're very fortunate on that front. And on top of that, we're really, just really excited about being given a shot at this. We're going to do our best. So
All right.
that would be my
I
answer
think
to
it's
that.
I think that's as good an answer as anyone could hope for.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a valid concern though. Like I don't want to sound that's my biggest complaint is when people act dismissive towards that. It's absolutely valid to be like, I don't see anything else from you guys. Are you going to? And I'm like, well, judge us when it comes out, please. But like, it's okay to be excited, but I understand where the caution is coming from.
And that kind of leads nicely into the next question here. There's been a huge concern for many players. I saw it a lot in the comments section on my last video. It's kind of the elephant in the room. We've talked about it briefly here and there. Unreal Engine 5. It's capable of a lot. There's also seems to be a lot of problems with it for a lot of people. We've seen some pretty poor performance from a lot of big studios using the engine. Stalker 2, Oblivion Remastered, MechWarrior 5 Clans, Mafia the Old Country, most recently Borderlands 4. But there's also success stories with the engine as well, like Satisfactory and Expedition 33. You've said that your team, I believe you said this before, that they have experience with the engine. What mistakes do you think those other games are making, and how does your team plan to avoid them?
Well, that's an interesting question. That's very complicated, and I'm going to use the term forward-facing and backward-facing. So from gamers' perspective, so forward-facing, so community or, the consumer-facing, it feels like a simple solution, right? Get it done. Have a plan, release game when optimized, right? Backward-facing, there's all sorts of things that can lead to bad launches and poor optimization that sometimes are out of the hands of development teams. Infamously, CD Projekt Red had obligations to shareholders. Cyberpunk, we all know about Cyberpunk's really rough launch, right? And it had just the worst launch and optimization, crazy bugs, you name it. But they were able to weather that and get to where they needed to go. And by the time that, if I'm not mistaken, Edge Runners came out on Netflix and a whole new wave of people came in and they had their DLC ready, Phantom of Liberty, the game was in the state that it should have been at launch. Um, I think the problem that happens generally, so I'm not speaking to those teams because I don't know anyone on those teams. I can't speak to what they went through. But the general problem that I think happens is there's a production snag. So there's an issue in production. And then that is compounded by you have finite time and you have contractual obligations, whether it's to publishers, first party, or investors.
Okay.
And I'll go further into it a little bit. This forces sometimes studios to release when they're not happy about releasing, when they have to. I will say, on a personal note, the thing that I dislike is when people release something pretending it's in a finished state when they could have simply said, hey, this is early access, and done a bit more of a slow roll. I really will call out Baldur's Gate 3 as being fantastic with saying, we're going to use community beta, like that big long play our opening, then play chapter 1, the wilderness section, over and over and over again with their community, and showing people kind of, look, this is how the sausage is made. This is under the hood of the engine. So people could really see the progress, right? We're in a community building business now in the game industry. It's important to be talking with your community constantly and keeping them up to date now, because people have been burned by razzle dazzle fakery so much. So it's important that people know where things are going. On the other side of it, like I know some of the games you're talking about, like Satisfactory, Expedition 33, and Oblivion, Clans, Old Country, and things like that, and Borderlands. Optimization is a huge thing to us at Flameborn, especially our programmers who talk to me about it all the time. It's first and foremost in our mind, because no one wants to have the energy sucked out of a launch. It's a special day when you get to ship a title for any studio, so you want it to be in the best state possible. So it's very important for us to make sure about that.
All right. Well, that all sounds pretty good. To wrap everything up and kind of go out on a high note here,
Very nice.
I'd like to give you a chance to share what you think is the most exciting thing about the game. So what are you looking forward to the most when you finally get to play Heavy Gear 3 in its finished state?
Oh man, there's stuff that I want to talk about that I can't talk about. So let me just be careful here, because there's still some stuff that I can't talk about as a creative
You
director.
want to
I
play
can't announce
Gearball.
yet.
That's what it is. Gearball
Gearball, yeah.
confirmed for Heavy Gear 3.
Hmm. God, so much. As a Canuck, I think maybe Gear Puck would be the one we want to do. No.
Fair enough.
But I'm just joking there. But I think the thing I'm the most excited about, like for me personally, is I can't wait to see Terra Nova come to life. All credit to Heavy Gear Assault for trying to nail that zoom and boom combat and really get the PvP stuff going. All credit to Heavy Gear 1 and 2 with the FMV videos and the mission stuff and the lore and shows and stuff. But I am so excited about bringing Terra Nova to life. Everything from the sandstorms to in the Badlands specifically, from the creatures to the sunrises to the farmsteads to the rovers, mercenaries to the grells to the hover tanks to the all of that stuff. And I'm really looking forward to getting down into that question. Can you escape human nature?
Did I
And
just hear Grell's
I'm
confirmed?
excited. Oh, grells are 100%
Oh,
confirmed. They're in the
nice.
game. How
Yeah.
can you have heavy gear without grells? Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
And we're gonna make. I'm gonna tell you right now. We're gonna do some exciting things with grells. We're really excited. It's gonna be great. And I can confirm Colonel Proust is in our game for sure.
Hell
The
yeah.
mad, the mad, the mad man of the humanist revolution. He's excited. And we're doing updates all the time on our Discord. So we have a Heavy Gear 3 Discord. So if you want to get updates, we do Q&As every 2 weeks. We just did one today. Usually around noon on Fridays, and then we upload later onto our YouTube channel, usually on Mondays and Tuesdays, a recorded version. We answer questions from the community, give sneak peeks, talk about development, and all sorts of stuff. So if people want to stay in tune and all that, please feel free to join that
All right.
Discord, and you can
I,
do it
I
there.
will have a link to that Discord down in the description as well, so people can head on over there.
Absolutely. Great. It was absolutely great to talk with you, Mage, and I can't wait to see some more Heavy Gear videos, obviously.
Yeah, I do plan to as we go along. I'm kind of diving into the lore myself. I'm pretty new to Heavy Gear. Fan wanted me to talk about it so much they bought me a box of Northern Gears. So I
Amazing.
actually painted up my first one a couple days ago. Western Frontier Protectorate Forever.
But you didn't get any. You didn't get any Paxton Arms, no Peace River, no New Coal. You didn't get any of the Southern Pride of the Republic.
No,
This is
no, I'm all
outrageous.
about that WFP.
We got to fix that. We got to send you some more stuff to
So
paint up.
I
Okay,
I
I'll
look
put that on my to-do list there.
I'm infamous in the BattleTech space for being obsessed with the Free Rosselhog Republic because they're the small underdog nation that gets stomped on by everybody else with very strong family value ties, and everyone else beats up on them. They've got old, outdated equipment and all this other stuff. And I go into Heavy Gear, and the WFP jumps out and is like, it's
Hmm.
Rosselhog in Heavy Gear, and it's even
Absolutely.
cooler.
With their last breath, they spit at thee as they fly their pilot right into your ship to kill your Ilkhan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Rasselhog is me. I'm a very big fan, and I absolutely love them. Listen, if you challenge those genetic super clans to a football game, that's the way to do it, you know. But I don't know what that's official lore from a fan thing, but that was something that cracked me up once.
I
But
believe that is canon.
yeah, it's a weird one, right? But I absolutely love. I think that's the other thing. If we're circling back to that question, and just as a way to leave off on this, if there is one similarity, I think between BattleTech and Heavy Gear, there's lore within the lore within the lore, and I think for a lot of us that is some of the funnest stuff to dig into when you go, wow, look at. I didn't know there's this, this, and this. It's so great. It's such a like a like a present inside of a present. It's always great to have.
Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating world, and I've been enjoying getting into it. I'll probably have some videos out about it as I actually learn things. I mean, not knowing much has never kept me from covering a topic before, so it won't stop me now. That's for sure. Uh,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, that's what we've got here. I want to thank you, Kevin, for coming on and talking and sharing some of the word about the new game. I hope everyone's as excited for it as I am. Us BattleTech and MechWarrior fans have wanted an open world RPG game set in our universe for a long time. We haven't gotten it, but we'll be perfectly happy to go to someone else's if they provide an experience like that. So
Well,
I'm excited
we're
for
very
it.
excited about it. Yeah, and I was absolutely happy to be here, and then hopefully we'll get to talk more in the future and all that jazz.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll keep myself available. But yeah, great talking with you, and thanks everybody for tuning in. And I hope you got something out of this interview. Until next time, this is Mage Leader and Kevin signing off.